Hello everybody and welcome to Mr. Stansfield's Education Videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at cropping in Photoshop. Let's jump into it. So first thing first, where and how do you find your photo? Well, let's go ahead and jump to Adobe Bridge, right? We're using Bridge, and if you're trying to get your bridge to look like mine, I have another video on that. Your folders, content, and then preview window nice and big with the metadata panel underneath is ideal. In this case, we've got this photo here, and this is for the Abstract Images project. I'm going to go ahead and just double click the small thumbnail here in the content window, and it should open it up here in Photoshop. Once I'm in Photoshop, I want to grab the crop tool, and let's just talk about cropping in general. When you're using the crop tool, you want to think a little bit about what you're doing. You want to improve your photo through cropping. In this case, there's a couple of things I might want to crop out. Much of this is sort of like up to personal preference, but for an image like this, I think it's a strong image for the Abstract Images project, but I think we can improve it by cropping. Once you grab the crop tool, you have a couple of options. You can click and drag somewhere in the photo to line up the crop box, or you could click and drag from the lines and the corners that are already here. If you're trying for a specific ratio, you can go up here and set that ratio. In this case, I think a good place to start is actually your original ratio. We don't want to have a photo that's super skinny or super tall. A square would be totally fine and totally appropriate. We may end up kind of making that choice in a little bit. We'll see how this goes. But that's a good place to start, and then you can always clear that ratio if you want to by pressing on the clear button right here. So you see how that original ratio and then clear gets rid of that. If I don't have a ratio, it'll let me do a crop something like this. Obviously that kind of super duper skinny narrow strip of image there isn't really what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and clear that. And then if you're getting to this point, you're like, oh, I want to start over again, you can always go up here and that'll reset it. So for this one, I think what I want to do is actually focus in somewhere down here. I think I want to crop out the red, crop out the design of whatever's happening over here as well, this sort of white corner. So this is looking pretty good. Now you can see some of this photo is sharp and some of this photo is blurry because of the depth of field. So maybe I want to even crop it a little bit further, bring this in a little bit so it really highlights the sharp part of the photo. I could rotate this too, right? So I could click and drag anywhere outside of this crop box. And if I click and drag, it'll let me rotate the image so that the lines in there look a certain way. I can click and drag that down a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit more to my liking. It's really, there's definitely a lot that can sort of be up to the individual photographer in terms of what you want to crop out of the frame and what you want to keep in. When you're done, you can go up here to the little check mark or hit enter or return on the keyboard, and you can see here we have the final product. So let's go into our history. Here's before, okay? And I'm just going to hit the shortcut key Command minus to zoom out so we can kind of see it. And then here's after. More abstract. I think this photo definitely appears more abstract, and that's what we're going for this particular project. You know, if you were doing a project on like a color isolation where you're just trying to capture one color in your picture, maybe we would include that red. You know, is it still abstract with the red part in there? I think so, right? So we could have cropped it like this instead, maybe a vertical photo, something like that. I'm gonna hit the enter key. You know, is this still an abstract photo? Absolutely. I think I like the simpler version better. So if I hit the shortcut key Command Z, that's how I undo that. And then again, you can see I can just click and drag this. Here I can rotate and then kind of pull this over, maybe something like that, maybe expand this down a little bit, right? And I could go back to that ratio if I wanted to. I could go to original ratio, and you can see I was pretty close visually to that. But if you wanted to keep a ratio of the original picture, you could do something like that, and then click your check mark to complete it. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see the detail. And I think, again, this is part of the photo is sharp, part of the photo is blurry. Would it be better if it was all sharp? Potentially, but in this case, I think this is probably a good way to show how the crop tool can improve your image. So, and there you go.